welcome everybody to this panel of Bridge Forum. This is Bridge Forum started, I mentioned, this series of panel discussions started more than 2 years ago in spring 2022. Now this is the 11th panel discussion. It is some of them would have been on site in Tirana, but mostly online for technical reasons. This panel is also done with the support of Open Society Foundation. And like always, like in all these series of discussions, they are done in collaboration with AIESEC, Association Internationale des Étudiants des Sciences Économiques et de Commerce, which is also very committed to intercultural dialogue. Namely the Albanian branch of this association, but which is connected also with other branches in the region, in the Western Balkans. The topic of this session is youth unemployment in Western Balkans. It is a topic that I think is especially interested for young people who are our audience, thanks mostly to the AIESEC, to our partners. Let me introduce briefly the two panelists that we have. One is Dr. Gjeka Charo, who is a professor, an associate professor at the University of Tirana, and also deputy manager at Skills and Job, which is an initiative supported by Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. She has extensive skills in development, migration studies and policy, digitalization and innovation in education. Aladdin, please, what is this noise? Anyway, so she has an extensive experience in all these areas, and she received. She has also a strong academic and research background. She received a PhD in population studies at the University of Groningen in Netherlands. Also, she is a lecturer in different European universities, and also has published papers in different academic journals. The other panelist is Professor Erion Mucha, who has a long professional experience as a lecturer and scientific researcher in education, employment, and career issues. He is a professor, he's a lecturer at the Department of Education and Science and Vocational Professional Training at Marin Barleti University in Tirana, and also a part-time, and he is a head of training structure at this university. And he is also a part-time professor, a part-time lecturer at the University of Tirana. He is an expert in the EU STEM coalition. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also an expert in European Talent Support Network. And he has been also active in the media about sensitive issues. Now I first leave the floor to the panelists, and then there'll be, like always, a dialogue with the audience, questions and answers, and interventions from the public we expect and wish. So first, let me leave the floor to Dr. Gjeka Charo.
Hello all, good afternoon. Many thanks, Bashkin, for this invitation to this very important, I think, topic and panel. I don't know if I can, it seems that I cannot share my screen. If you can give me the right to share my presentation, because I prepared some slides, maybe.
It has to be already given the permission. Could you please check again if you have share screen button?
Yeah, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So
okay, just give me one minute. I will be back.
Sure. So my discussion today, it will be of course around the topic of youth performance in the labor market in the Western Balkan, focusing on two main challenges or elements as I see them affecting, let's say, the labor market participation and performance of youngsters in the labor market in the Western Balkans, the role of skills mismatch and migration as two of the important, let's say, challenges facing today Western Balkans in general, and Albanian in particular, which will be also one of the focuses of my presentation. Well, until I will continue without a presentation, not to lose time, and as soon as I get the right to share it, I will send it to the participants at a later moment. So initially, I want to talk a bit of youth in the labor market in the Western Balkans, let's say, in general. The economic growth in the Western Balkans overall has improved following the pandemic of 2020. However, during 2023 has slowed down compared to the 2022 by around 1.4%, reflecting the impact of the weak growth in the European Union, which is the key partner actually for the Western Balkan, with all the element of ongoing impact on the Ukrainian war or high inflation rates. The EU growth has slowed down during the last 2 years, which has impacted also the economic performance of the Western Balkans. The regional labor market, okay, I am informed that this should be open, so let me try. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see, and I think everybody can see.
Okay, that's good. So the regional labor market continued to perform well for Western Balkans economies in 2023. Employment declined across the countries, with the overall rate reaching to 10.9% in 2023. The youth labor force participation rate in Western Balkans was around 30.1% compared to 37.8% in EU countries. There is, however, this improved, let's say, performance. Still, there is a large gender gap in the youth labor force participation for Western Balkans, with 13.2% difference between young men and women. The youth unemployment rate was above 21% for all Western Balkans economies, compared to just 14.5% of the EU countries. While young people, neither in employment nor in education and training, which are in the needs, let's say, category, averages at around 23.7% in the Western Balkan, compared to 11.1% in the EU. But the youth unemployment rate, as I mentioned, in the EU stands at 14.5%. However, a decade ago, this rate was 24%. While 1.7 million, there are 1.7 million fewer young people in the NEET category across the EU. So how did youth unemployment and the percentage of NEETs decreased with such a range, so for approximately 10% over the past 10 years in EU, despite the COVID pandemic, the war in Ukraine, or other crises affecting the EU labor market? Of course, there has been improved macroeconomic contexts, which has certainly played a role. However, evidence suggests that the Youth Guarantee Scheme or program implemented in EU countries has had a major transformative effect. Youth Guarantee was launched by the European Commission in 2013 and was reinforced in 2020 as a political commitment of EU member states to give all young people under the age of 30 within 4 months of leaving formal education or becoming unemployment, a good quality offer of employment, of continued education, or an apprenticeship or traineeship. Overall, in EU, there were more than 24 million young people which were registered in the Youth Guarantee schemes, programs, and received such an offer. So this has significantly improved the situation or the performance of youngsters in the EU countries, in the labor market. But what is happening in the Western Balkan countries with such a program? Within the Economic Investment Plan for the Western Balkans, published by the European Commission in 2020, the Youth Guarantee Program became an obligation also for Western Balkan economies, aspiring to be EU membership. Western Balkans economies are now, now that we're talking at different stages of implementing the Youth Guarantee Program. North Macedonia, which initiated the program in 2018, is the most successful example, actually, which has seen important improvements. However, such plans have been adopted by Serbia, Kosovo, and Albania. Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina are still waiting for adoption of such schemes. In case of Serbia, the youth unemployment rate for the 2022, it stands at 24.9%, while the NEETs category stands roughly at 15%. The Youth Guarantee has been recognized in the National Employment Strategy for the period of 2021-2026, and in the Youth Strategy adopted in January 2023. And Serbia, since 2023, has adopted the implementation plan for the Youth Guarantee schemes. Kosovo as well, the Youth Guarantee Plan has been adopted in 2022, while the unemployment rates, the youth employment rates in Kosovo has seen an important decrease in 2023, reaching to only 10.9% from an almost 50% rate in 2020, mainly due to the pandemic, but also dropping from 21.4% in 2022 to only 10.9%. So we see important improvements in the case of Kosovo, and we remain to see what the youth guarantee schemes are going to improve or provide for Kosovo in the mid-term and long term. While Montenegro and Bosnia, the unemployment rate of Montenegro stands at 28.3% in May 2023, while the unemployment rate in Bosnia is the highest in the entire region, reaching at 33.47 in 2022. And these are the two only countries in the region who have not yet adopted the youth guarantee implementation plan. So following this expose, let's say, of the unemployment situation or labor market performance of young youth in Western Balkans, I want to focus now a bit more thoroughly on the Albanian case, which is also an area, a region that I have been studying more thoroughly during the last year. So some context for Albania. I see that in the participants are not all from Albania, so it was a good idea to put some context for the country. Albania is situated in the southern Eastern Europe. It has gone through a brutal dictatorship for 45 years until the 90s, where the country then was open to the market and to the democratic system, let's say. It is EU candidate status since 2014 and started accession negotiation in 2022. It has a population of 2.4 million inhabitants, and this is a very fresh data from today's, as the Institute of Statistics of Albania finally published the results of the last census of 2024. It has seen a decrease of the population from 2.8 million to 2.4 million in the last 10 years, and mainly because of outward emigration. Moreover, some context for the private sector in the country and the labor market. The private sector firms or companies are mainly micro enterprises, 85.6% of them, and only 2% of the enterprises are in the big, let's say, span of it. The organized business is almost in existence in Albania. Oftentimes it's one-man show, and there are no services provided whatsoever for the companies. Private sector is complaining of the high staff turnover. However, there is little investment put by the private sector for staff upskilling or training. As per 2022, the unemployment rate in Albania it's 10.9%, while the youth unemployment rate is almost 25%. The needs, the youth neither in employment, education or training is 26.1%, which is quite high. Only 17.5% of the students or the youngsters are enrolled in vocational education, which is the lowest in the Western Balkan regions. And Albania has adopted the implementation plan for the youth guarantee in the National Youth Strategy for the period 2023-2030. The labor market situation in Albania, as we see, there are improvements in time from comparison from 2015 to 2022. Both employment has increased. Here it is a comparison between the total population, the orange line, and the youngsters 15 to 24 years, the blue line. We see the gap, which is quite high between the groups. Higher in the employment situation, a bit lower on the unemployment situation, and we see that the unemployment for youngsters has dropped visibly from 2015 to 2022, but it's still quite high compared to the EU standards. Here I wanted to make a comparison to understand the importance of vocational education and training. Here I have some data of the labor market performance of vet graduates 1 year after they graduate. In Albania since 2016, Skills for Jobs, which is a project I am engaged with from Swiss Contact, is perform, let's say, tracer studies for vocational education and training graduates 1 year after they graduate. Here are the data from 10 vocational education schools in Albania out of 30 of them. And we see an important improvement in the labor market performance of VET graduates, starting from 2016, where the employment and self-employment rate have been 33% to a 71% in 2022, while the unemployment rate has dropped from 36% to only 16%. If we compare this data with the total rate of unemployment for youngsters, this is much lower compared to 25% of the youngsters being unemployed in the labor market. So for VET graduates, it's only 60%. The performance of the VET graduates in the labor market is also successful in terms of quality of employment. In the other graph, we see the income for employed VET students 1 year after graduating, and we see that the higher salaries, so above the minimum wage, has increased from 2017 compared to 2022. And the gainful employment, which is called the employment where the salary is above the minimum wage, it's reached 77% in 2022 compared to only 24% in 2017. If we have such, let's say, good performance of VET graduates in the labor market, then why there are only 70% of the youngsters enrolled in vocational education and training? So this really needs to be in the focus of the Albanian government to actually improve and promote vocational education and training as a secure future for the youngsters. Although this positive, let's say, overview, however, to sum it up, the Albanian youth is still very vulnerable. To repeat, 26.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
I would suggest a question at the end, right?
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I will continue, and then at the end
Yes.
we can take questions. 26% of young people in Albania are not employed, not receiving education and training, while 25% of them are unemployed. Only 16% of them chooses vocational education and training, although this seems to be a good perspective for youngsters in Albania. 79% of young people are considering emigration, so leaving the country, in their short-term and mid-term plans, while 95% of students abroad the country do not intend to return after their studies. The education system seems to not have links with the private sector, and we can say that it is failing youth. So no links with private sector, no exposure to the world of work, leaving youngsters unprepared for the labor market. And if only 9% of high school graduates want to leave the country, the percentage explodes to 79% of the university graduates. So for sure, we must do something wrong to in such a short span of years of youngsters in education to reach such levels of potential migration. I see two main challenges for this situation. So for the vulnerability of young people in the labor market in Albania. One is the skills mismatch. Although Albania is a growing economy, this growth is not translating into enough high-quality jobs and high productivity. This is especially true for young and lower educated people. Albanian market is characterized as we saw from the data by high youth unemployment, high informality, and low participation of women. While skills are central in raising the productivity of employment, there is evidence that the education in Albania is not actually paying off. the skills youngsters gain from their education do not match those demanded by employers. And youngsters, as such, are more likely to remain unemployed for long term, which then leads to skill degradation and their desire and their actual action of leaving the country to find better matches abroad. From a recent study from the World Bank, we see that the hiring problems from firms are more pronounced for occupations which require higher skills. The limited number of applicants was reported as the main obstacle to hiring. A majority of hiring firms are skills constraints, meaning that they experience difficulties in hiring because of job applicants lack skills, but also work experience. There is an inadequate education is seen as an obstacle. So skills constraints are likely a result of lacking quality of general education system and the relevance of the vocational education and training system. Moreover, the relevance of the training curricula and the current modality of delivery in the vocational education and training, which is mainly school-based and not private sector-based. So students are not really learning in practical terms in the companies. This does not promote work-based learning and does not promote exposure of these youngsters with the world of work while they are studying, leaving them unprepared for the world of work after they graduate. But what can Albania do to improve the skills development system so that employers find the workers they need, but also young people find relevant jobs after graduating? The demand for skill and existing skill gaps actually needs to be addressed and well understood, both to improve the labor market matching and to foster productivity growth. I can stress, or I can underline 5 important areas of actions Albania can explore to solve the situation. So first is the strengthening of the role of the employers, of companies in provision and their engagement in the vocational education and training, but also in the formal education system through work-based learning. Second is fostering more labor market relevant skills in the education and training systems, addressing information asymmetries and this lost in translation between employers and job seekers, and strengthening the matching services. Oftentimes we find cases that companies and job seekers cannot find each other, even though both of them do exist. And building management capacities in the private sector companies to assess and identify their skills needs. From several studies, we see that firms and companies cannot articulate the skills they need. And it's difficult for them then to go out and to find these skills while hiring youngsters, let's say. And lastly, but not least, adjusting labor market regulations to reduce employers' gender bias in hiring decisions, as we see that this is a common practice among firms in Albania. A second challenge I wanted to address is migration. Albanian migration is becoming famous for its facts and figures. Albania has the highest migration rate in the Western Balkans, but not only, one of the highest actually in the whole world, is among the top countries in the world for the scale of its immigrant stocks, where around 60% of the current residents of the population of the country actually lives abroad, and 35% of the active population has left the country. Flows are considered to be 6 times greater than the average flows in developing countries. But who are the migrants? They are mainly younger than the counterparts who remained in Albania. So the youth is leaving Albania. They are higher educated lately, especially in the last flows. They are higher educated and middle class, are more likely to migrate in comparison to the early ways of migration, where there were mainly low class and low educated migrants. There is a slow balanced demographic, so in terms of gender and generation, and there are more and more family and planned migration nowadays compared to more individual and sporadic migration waves at the beginning of the 9th. Migration should bring to development, or at least the literature says so. However, in the case of Albania, given the trends of migration, unfortunately, this is not the case. So why we should be worried and why migration in Albania is not yet a win-win situation. Remittances are considered to be the main element of migration to lead to development. And in Albania, remittances are a very important part of the Albanian economy, counting from 10 to around 22% of GDP over the years. So it's quite, they're quite huge, let's say. However, remittances have played an important role in reducing poverty, but yet, in Albania, remittances are mainly used at the individual or family level, so leading to remittances dependency of the individuals of the people, and not at the development of the economy of the country. Return migration is another element which might be very important for the development, because it brings back human capital, skills, knowledge, financial capital, and it can impact and improve the demographic trends of the country. However, we have seen the return migration. It's in Albania, there are no data or little data available. We have had two important moments in the country, one in 2010, 2013, a major return mainly of youngsters returned from Greece, around 200,000 Albanian migrants returned from Greece to Albania because of the economic crisis mainly, but also during 2015, 2017, there have been return of asylum seekers, mainly from Germany. However, we see that the majority of the return migrants have re-emigrated after failed reintegration in the country. Another important element of migration is diaspora engagement. In the origin country can boost investment, can boost circular migration, transnational businesses network, and can improve the public opinion for the country. However, we see that although 59% of the current resident population of the country lives abroad, there is little or no engagement with Albania, as there is no actually strategy from the Albanian government on how to tap in on diaspora and stimulate circular and return migration. So we see that even though the potential of migration is there, that we cannot say that this is tapped in or it's used. So what are the costs of migration for Albania and for Albanian youth and their performance, let's say, in the labor market? I often say that migration is the elephant in the room, which no one really talks about, because the policies and the government agenda in this regards are not responding to the dynamic of the phenomenon. Albania is actually in a demographic emergency because its population is decreasing and aging, and there is a continuous depopulation of the periphery of the country and polarization of the center of the country. And all of this comes with high costs, such as a distortion of the age and gender structures, population decline. As we saw from today's data, there are almost 500,000 less Albanian in the country in the last 10 years, and this is mainly because of immigration. There is a chaotic urbanization in the country. Migration has largely affected the younger population. As a result, the median age in Albania is now 38 years old, while the fertility rate has declined to 1.4, which is the lowest ever that Albania has experienced. it is foreseen that in the next 20 years, the population over 60 years in the country will double. And this calls for a human capital crisis, actually, because migration is creating a severe bottleneck for the economy of the country and for the private sector. There is decrease of the workforce. So in 2030, it's forecasted that there will be 33% less people in the productive age. There is brain drain and skills drain, high dependency of the older generation of youth, and limited diaspora investments and in the end engagement in the country. Key economic sectors such as tourism seem to be at risk of not expanding further due to staff shortages. So there are no people to be employed actually in the tourism sector. And while we see that 70% of the unemployed in Albania are not able to meet the labor market needs because of lack of skills. So all of these elements are a huge cost for the human capital and for the Albanian economy. But what can we do? Because oftentimes we hear that we cannot do much to stop these trends, but at least can we try? I mentioned before, and I think that is a statistic that needs to be repeated, that only 9% of high school graduates wants to leave the country versus 79% of university graduates. So it is clear that the sooner we take action, the better it would be. So what can we do with these youngsters wanting to leave Albania? So while Albania talks of human capital crisis, we cannot afford to lose the skills and the educated youth. So what can we do is to really expose them early to the world of work and to have a quality engagement of the private sector with the education system in due time. So not leave the education system do its job without the participation of the private sector. Introduction of the dual vet system in Albania has become imperative. So students should be seen as employees as young as 15 years old. Albania is taking step forward this actually this path, as in September 2024, a couple of vet schools in Albania are going to pilot the dual system, especially for the tourism hospitality sector. Of course, elements such as fostering innovation, creativity, boosting engagement of youngsters in startups, investing in entrepreneurship initiatives and education. All these elements can provide youth with alternatives and more opportunities to facilitate their successful integration into the labor market. So this, let's say, was everything that I wanted to talk about today, and I'm happy to hear from you and initiate some discussions through questions and answers. I'm going to stop the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I was told that I will thank you first for your knowledgeable and presentation with much information and interesting and pertinent analysis. Now, before giving the floor to Professor Erion Mucha, I have a message saying that someone has an urgent question for you, Erka. Who is the... Anyone has an urgent question, or should we wait like in any other sessions?
Yes, that was me.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Ariel. I am a law student at Faculty of Law in the University of Tirana. And well, I had a question about the studies. I was curious to know how many students were polled for the study, and did that number change? Like, because I remember like about 5 slides ago, there was a study done from 2016 up to 2022. Yes. So I wanted to know what was the number of students polled for 2016, and did it change up until the 2022? So just for the accuracy of the results, because I was actually surprised I am a student, as I said, and I am every day in contact with young people who want to work or are at work, and most of them maybe want to work, but they have issues either finding a job or something else going on, and a very small amount is actually employed. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah, thank you. Bashkim, can I go on, or shall I take the questions?
Yes, you can go like you want, like maybe at the end or now, whatever.
Okay,
We'll-
well, I'll respond, and then we give the we give the rest of the question at the end. Thanks,
Yes.
Ariel, for the question. I want to say that the study actually, it's a longitudinal study with vet graduates 1 year after their graduation for 10 vocational education schools in Albania. I cannot recall now the sample, but it's a census, so it's not a sampling, meaning that we trace all the graduates from these 10 schools. The number has increased in time because of the number of graduates has increased, so not because more are responding. We have a response rate of around 79.6%, which is a very good percentage, because the system is let's say it's quite accurate. And why we saw this improvement in the rates of employment and decrease in unemployment, I can say that one of the affecting factors have been the exposure of this, and I'm not talking about students at the higher education, at the university. These are students at the vocational education and training schools, which are at the gymnasium level. So they are, when they graduate, they are 18 years old. And 1 year after graduation, they are 19, let's say. This is because the exposure that these 10 schools had with the private sector since the beginning of the studies. So the students have completed their apprenticeships at the private sector, at the companies, and not in school. So their practical training, or what we call internships in the language of the higher education, has been in the companies. So this
was like let's say an experiment. If they engage 1 year after school, they engage
it's an experiment of 30% of the total population of the vet graduates, let's say. So it's quite a big sample. So yeah, but it's a result of a project actually who exposed these youngsters with the private sector through apprenticeships.
I understand. Okay.
And this has resulted in this increased, and because of that, also in my recommendation, I really focused on the engagement of the private sector with the education system to actually.
I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Erka. So I leave the floor now to Professor Erion Mucha.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in this online discussion about the employment and unemployment of the young people. In fact, I have not prepared the presentation material, but I have prepared myself with a summary of the most important issues related to young people unemployment. In fact, for convenience, I have focused on answering some important questions about the global employment situation that in Balkan region, then on what is happened in Albania regarding the same and similar employment challenges as those in the region. Finally, some recommendation and conclusions on what I think can and should be improved in Albania and in countries of the region. The first is, who is the global employment situation? The global unemployment rate will increase in 2024, according to the International Labour Organization, which is concerned about productivity, worsening inequality and inflation affecting disposable incomes. The global employment rate from 5.3% in 2022 fell to 5.1% in 2023, but in 2024, 2 million additional workers are expected to look for work, raising the rate to 5.2%. The ILO estimated in its report on global employment trends and social outlook for 2024. What is the problem in the Balkan region with the employment? Regardless of whether we refer to the Western Balkan, according to the International Republican Institute survey, February 2024, unemployment is the main problem faced by the countries of the Western Balkans. Kosovo, 29%, ranks it as the first concern, although with a significant improvement from 2022, 46% in Albania, where the survey was conducted for the first time. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Montenegro, unemployment is ranked as the second biggest concern, while in Serbia and North Macedonia, unemployment is ranked as the third biggest concern. But how is the situation of employment and unemployment in the region in 2024 compared to 2023? The latest report of the World Bank 2024 shows a decline in employment in 2024 after a satisfactory increase in 2023 of 48.1%. Unemployment fell in all countries of the region to a figure of 10.9%, while participation in the labor market increased on average in 54%. However, even though youth unemployment in 2023 in the region fell to 25.5%, it's still much higher than in European countries, which have it all 30.8%. How has the increase of salaries in relation to productivity? According to the International Monetary Fund, the value of workers' work in Albania is 40% lower than in the region. The increase of salaries in the economy of Albania in the last 2 years has not been accompanied by increase in production, and this trend is dangerous, notes the International Monetary Fund in the last consultation of the agreement with Albania. Final report in 2024 in all countries of the region, with the exception of Kosovo, the increase of salaries was higher than the productivity. This shows an attempt to redistribute in accumulated income, but also a lack of system and mechanism for this salary increase to affect productivity. In order for this to be realized, clear objectives for the achievements of the employees must be set, and then an evaluation of the skills and knowledge of the human capital in relation to the work they do, to measure their performance, efficiency and commitment, but also degree of motivation to work more with the salary increase, and then intervene in the development of the skills and knowledge both by the company, by the employee himself independently for fulfill the expectation of the enterprise. Does the informality of work have an impact on the performance of the labor market of the region? According to the European Commission and the World Bank, informal employment in the countries of the region varies from 30 to 35%, where it remains the same in Albania, Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro, and where is decreases to 20 to 25% in North Macedonia and Serbia. Regardless of this data, the level of informality of work is much higher in the region than in European countries, which is an average of 16%. Despite this data, the International Labor Organization, ILO, from monitoring the situation, believes that the figure from 40 to 45% in Albania if the agriculture sector is included. In this data, it is clearly understood that a part of the work is informal and not covered by official data, which makes it difficult not only to accurately measure of employment and the level of employment, but also deprives those who work informally of enjoying contractual and human rights from work, and therefore enjoy the right to the real right of old age pension in the future. Informality has a negative effect on the employee's inability to document works and expertise more often than not, and he cannot secure a recommendation from the employer on the contribution and added value he has brought to the institution and the enterprise where he worked there. Where do young people work, and how do they respond in time to the trend and the impossibility for finding a classing job in the Balkan countries? According to the data from Gjeka regional data portal, in Albania during the last year, about 15,000 people were employed in online platforms in Albania. North Macedonia and Albania have the highest number of online employees in relation to the population, and the other countries in the region, nearly 58% of online workers in the region are freelancers registered with Upwork, the dominant remote work platform in the region. Upwork, Freelancer, and Guru were the leading remote work platforms in Balkan countries for employ young people. What happens to Albania regarding employment? In the fourth quarter of 2023, according to the Institute of Statistics of Albania, the employment rate for the population aged 15-64 is 66.7%. In the fourth quarter of 2023, the official unemployment rate in Albania was 10.7%. The official unemployment rate for young people aged 15 to 29 is 22.0%. During the fourth quarter of 2023, 16.1% of the economically inactive and working age population were fulfilling household duties. 9.2% of them were retired or early retired, while 12.6% in permanent disability. During the fourth quarter of 2023, also 4.6% of the economically inactive population declared that they were not looking for work because they believed that there are not available jobs, so they are classified as discouraged and unemployed. According to a 2024 analysis of the Regional Cooperation Council under the initiative of Berlin, the immigration of young people for years has created problems in the labor market, but is implying the erosion of democracy and democratic processes in the countries. The analysis of the study calculates that the population of young people in Albania has decreased by 2.5% in the last 4 years. Surveys on potential immigration have revealed that the 61% of young people are considering immigration in their short and medium term plan. According to Instat data from 2011 to 2023, more than 512,000 people emigrated from the country, where about 70% of them were young people. The situation, who is the situation with job vacancies and in which industries are they? What is the difference between unemployment and available jobs? According to the National Employment Agency in Albania, 39,115 job vacancies are announced for 2023, where about 76% of them were new and the rest were replacement. The data show that only 11% of job offers are addressed to managers and clerks, while almost 90% are addressed to support workers and those with elementary skills. The unemployment who were registered at the employment offices were over 78,000 people, over twice as many of the available job vacancies. In 2022, over 40% of job vacancies were in processing industries, which are represented by production lines in the fashion sector, the food industry, and the automotive sector also. The trade sector was the second largest provider of job with 14%, followed by hotels and restaurants with 10%, construction with 8%, information and communication with 5.8%. While in May 2024, the National Employment Agency in Albania published that only 7.6% of requests from the industry are for training employees with higher education. What are some of conclusions for the labor market in Albania? So, in general overview, it can be seen that regardless of the facts that the general employment is low, that of young people is high, including economically inactive young people who are considered in unemployment, discouraged, and who think that are not suitable and available jobs for them. Economic and social aspects are contributing to this trend, fortunately. Likewise, the immigration of young people is driven by concerns about the quality of life, the standards of education, and the lack of suitable employment opportunities for them. In this framework, I think there is a very big difference that has to do the total number of unemployment young people, as well as with this discrepancy between the demand of the market and the interest, expectation, and desire that young people have to access this job, also related to differences in the level of education and training. This difference is inherited from the mentality to continue higher studies in different branches and profiles, disregarding the demands of the specific labor market for professions, crafts, and simple jobs, as well as from the lack, but also the general confusion about the true potential of the opportunities for job that Albania labor market has to bring professionals. If the majority of young people have flocked to university study programs when the need and demand has been in other direction. What are the problems and what should be solved in the Albanian labor market? In Albania, we have an urgent need for labor force for many industries and little demands for them. In Albania, sectors and industries such as construction, manufacturing, bars, restaurants, tourism have very high demands for hiring workers, but they are not finding them and are turning to the interest to approach foreign workers. In Albania, while general unemployment has decreased by a few percentage point, that of young people remains unalterably high, while the increase in the minimum wage required by the law, and the average salaries in the public sector do not reflect the increase in the general levels of salaries, since the level of growth in private sector is much slower than that of the public sector, and much lower in value, but interest to work mainly in the private sector on the part of employees. While incentives and motivational programs for young talents have been added and decreased, there is still no institutionalization of how to identify and cultivate the tendencies and talents of students in out of school, as well as how career counseling is carried out. While the national plans and the employment strategy have been approved, no concrete steps have been taken on how to intervene in the labor market to improve this situation. Meanwhile, branches and university study programs are declared priorities, such as tourism, teaching, and the interest to study in them is low due to the lack of a job guarantee and the closing of the employment cycle at the start of the studies. In Albania, where most of the requests are for job profiles with elementary education and up to general secondary and vocational up to high technical education, public investments toward vocational education schools have been restrained, and the study quotas for students in them have caused small increases that they cannot cope with the high demands of industries and entrepreneurships for human capital. Likewise, the higher technical study programs have not yet been formalized as employment criteria in the public administration for more employment opportunities for those who complete this level of study. While we hear requests and complaints from enterprises and businesses that are not finding employees, they never take the analysis from themselves of what they have done wrong and what perception and judgment they have in the labor market as the enterprise regarding the treatment and incentive of employees. While we are talking and discussion the importance of Albania's membership in the EU and the conditions that must be fulfilled, the modernization and the standards that the internal functioning of an enterprise must have today to treat, motivate, and incentivize the employee by treating there as a value added and not as an additional cost and expense, and as a means only for fulfill the goals of their profit. Who are the conclusions and some of recommendations about this situation in Albania, but none also in Western Balkan countries? Albania currently lacks a national job offer, so that everyone knows what positions, professions, and crafts are required in Albania now and will be required later. What criteria are there for employment in them? What education and experience the candidate must have to have many chances of employment? Will meritocracy be guaranteed in the recruitment process or not? It presents and creation would help anyone to understand the real potential of the labor market and would make it easier to find oneself in career planning. Albania really needs the fair and equal remuneration of the employer from the employer on the basis of commitment, performance, efficiency, work results, and productivity. Albania really needs 100% respect of the employment contracts for the employee and dignified treatment of at work, taking into account all the infrastructure for him to feel good. In Albania, there is a need to synchronize the steps and efforts made by public and private institutions to strengthen the competitiveness of the labor market based on equality and meritocracy, but also on the models that must be implemented to strengthen and consolidate support for human capital by motivating and incentivize it in order to make the local market as attractive as possible. Enterprises and companies must become more competitive to become preferred by employees through the level of salaries, working conditions, solidarity towards the employee, rewards based on results, flexibility of work hours, evaluation through results and not long working hours, internal training for employees, growth and internal development of employees in their careers, increases in position, human sensitivity toward them. In this way, they promote themselves better and consequently become preferable for employment. Enterprises must build internal system and mechanism for career promotion, bonuses and rewards for their employers, internal training, motivational standards, recreational activities, so that the employee knows every link and point of view of the support he has from the enterprise. Employees must update their skills and knowledge with the trends of the time by developing the intelligent process of searching and finding work in a strategic way to search and discover the job space in the market and specialize in it. Do you hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Dedication, I mean then, dedication of a subject for this process, the employers needs training and specialization of teachers to realize it, as well as the creation and administration of the talent database in each field, and their support to develop, promote, and commercialize their talent in the international markets. Also, is another urgent conclusion and recommendation. Harmonization of all initiatives and steps for the realization of promotional activities for new talents is required to create the National Talent Program with the aim of knowing at any time who our talented are, their achievement, etc., to serve as an important pillar as for country as well as a model for the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Erion Mucha, and for your broad approach and also for the solutions that you propose. Now let's go. We have something a bit more than a quarter of an hour for questions and answers. First, there was a question from Justice, the beginning. Please, Justice, what was your question? Do you hear me? Okay, so there was a question from another of the participants. What about gender differences in unemployment? Is this affected by culture, by the economic factors, or their level of study? So first, Erka, whether you would like to answer to that.
The gender employment gap in Albania, it's not significantly higher, let's say, compared to the EU countries and also to the Western Balkan countries. And I can say that the reasons are a bit the common reasons of the gender gap, that it's the situation a bit all over the world economies. So such as, I don't know, labor market segregation, marital status of women, unpaid care and responsibility that women have at home, inadequate child care oftentimes, but also some cultural and social norms. There is no education gap with this regard, at least in Albania, because statistically women are more educated than men in this case. But also the inability of women, or the higher tendency of men in leadership and managerial positions compared to women, or men are more inclined to take short-term jobs on short-term notice than women, which needs more time to regard or agree on a job offer. So a bit of the reasons that exist everywhere are also valid in the Albanian case.
Okay. Erion, what would be your comment for this question? What about gender differences in unemployment? Is this affected by culture, by economic factor, or the levels of study?
I think that is affected by the culture and our mentality, because we have some specific position in enterprises that who are being for many years attributed to the men, but in the few years we have differences about this position, because more from the professions who are attributed by them and do it by the men in the future now can do more lightly by the women, as engineering, or about architecture, also professions that who now are more opened by the women to do more lightly, as a kind of doing them in compared by the men. I think is now is not a real an effective difference between men and women, and also the more women in Albania have passed this problem in of the mentality in the future, and now are I think is only affected by our culture, but is a separated problem for now.
Another question, this is addressed to Erka. What is something that is essential for the increase of the motivation for youth regarding the employment and to stay in Albania too?
Yeah, well, thank you. This is a huge question, and yeah, difficult to answer. I oftentimes do a small experiment with my students as they start university, and they are like 18 years old, and I asked a class full of students, around like 100 of them, who intends to leave, because I teach also migration policies, and so it's related to the subject I teach, who wants to leave the country after they finish their studies. So, and few hands are up, the majority of them not. And they repeat the question when they are in at the final or at the third grade of their bachelor, or even in their master's. And at that moment, around 90% of the class, it's really hands up, wanting to leave the country as soon as they finish their studies. So this is alarming, I think, even though the potential migration is not let's say, preferred migration at the end, but the potential is there, and meaning that if they have the opportunity, they'll take it. And I see it as I mentioned also during the presentation, the education system somehow fails youngsters in Albania. For 4 years or for 8 years, they are like closed in these classrooms without any exposure to the world of work, to the companies, to what is out there, what are the opportunities, what are the needs, what are the skills they need. So if we expose them more to the private sector, to the labor market, if they try to work as they study more and more, but in jobs related to their education, they do the waiters, they do jobs during their studies, but not jobs related to what they study. And if we bring the private sector into the schools, open the door for them, let them work with the curricula, let them teach, and let them practically help students and youngsters, I think this will change the motivation, and will change the mentality of the youngsters. That this somehow it desires, unexplained desires to leave the country, because it's not that there are no job opportunities, but there are not relevant job opportunities for youngsters. Why Albania continues to study, I don't know, subject or directions that are not related to the needs of the economy, to the needs of the labor market, and at the end they found themselves after 4 or 5 years without opportunities and without a future. So these are a bit the things that I have noticed during these years, and I have seen that the more the youngsters are involved, exposed, and really they study what is needed in the labor market, the more there is the trend of them to be engaged early on and then to stay. We have seen this also with vocational education graduates, which they start to work since they are 15 in the practical learning at the companies. And once they finish school, they already get a good salary because they have 4 years work experience already. They are employed in good companies, good salaries, with a job that matches their degree, let's say. So everything is there for them to stay. Of course, there will be people who will leave, and Albania does not want this, does not want people not to leave, but wants to give opportunities, and maybe people who leaves and returns, this circular and return migration that I mentioned, that are development potential for the country.
Okay, any other question from the audience? Well, if there is no other question.
Elian has a question for Arion, I guess. Or...
I don't know. I don't see
it
it.
was just a comment, sorry. It was just...
No. And so it also means that it was very clear what you said. Also, and stimulating, because we had some interesting questions and discussion. Now we are coming to the end of the time, and let me thank both of you, Erka and Arion, and thank the audience for following us and for their attention. So see you another time. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.